The stepmother pleaded with her stepson to join her in this endeavor. My name is Emily, and I feel compelled to express something that has been occupying my thoughts recently. In recent months, I've observed something peculiar. A companion of ours, let's refer to him as Jack, started appearing more often than he had in the past. He stayed nearby, even in the absence of my husband. First, I hardly considered it. Ultimately, we inhabit the same environment and engage with one another nearly every day. However, as this pattern continued, I began to feel that there was something more than just friendship lingering in the atmosphere. His gazes lingered, and now and then, I noticed him observing me with a curious, contemplative look. Initially, I brushed it off as mere youthful curiosity, nothing beyond that. Still, an unsettling feeling lingered that I couldn't quite dispel. These moments appeared insignificant, nearly inconsequential, yet they were growing increasingly difficult to overlook. One day, while I was folding clothes, he stopped at my doorway. I sensed his gaze upon me, and when I glanced up, he swiftly turned away, as though he had been discovered in a moment of indiscretion. Since then, I've approached things with greater caution, yet the internal tension remained unmistakable. That evening, as we found ourselves alone at home, a common situation since my husband frequently worked late, I was in the kitchen attending to chores. Jack arrived to assist, which was unusual for him unless he was encouraged. We stood side by side, chopping vegetables in silence, when his hand lightly grazed mine. It was a brief contact, but it ignited a spark within me. He pulled his hand back, remaining silent, merely casting a glance in my direction, as if anticipating a response. In that brief moment, we both recognized a change in our relationship. I carried on as if nothing had occurred and proceeded with my task. Yet, the feeling of his touch remained. An inner voice attempted to persuade me that it was merely a figment of my imagination. Yet the harder I tried to accept that notion, the more evident it became that we both sensed a shift had occurred. After dinner, we withdrew to our individual rooms. Yet sleep remained elusive for hours. Every glance, every awkward moment, they all merged in my thoughts. I dreaded that I could no longer feign ignorance to these nuances. The next day, I decided to behave as if everything was just fine. It was as if the incident had never happened. We both avoided being alone together. Yet, in spite of my attempts to return to the past, the recollection of his touch lingered in my mind. Whenever he walked into a room, I would search for excuses to divert my gaze or occupy myself with other tasks. He kept his distance, speaking very little, yet the silence was overwhelming, suggesting he shared the same discomfort but was at a loss for how to confront it. I occasionally considered that a direct conversation could alleviate the tension, maybe even redefine our boundaries. Nonetheless, I felt a sense of fear that engaging in conversation may only intensify the emotions, driving us further away from maintaining control. The dwelling brimmed with unvoiced thoughts. We each sought solitude in our own rooms or ventured out on small errands. He devoted more time to his friends or lingered at school until late. Yet each time our eyes met, the unspoken tension was palpable, building, intertwined with a sense of remorse. I repeatedly told myself that this was not right, constantly reminding myself of my obligations. Yet, the thoughts of him would not relent. As time went on, the circumstances escalated to a critical juncture. Our conversation was minimal. Yet this quietude transformed our new form of communication, where all that remained unspoken was inherently grasped. The atmosphere in the house felt fragile, as if every step could shatter the silence, with the tension only growing stronger in the stillness. One evening, I found myself returning home later than I typically do. My spouse. The house was enveloped in an unsettling stillness, a silence that seemed to stretch endlessly. Upon entering the kitchen, I discovered Jack already present, seated at the table, absorbed in his phone. He raised his gaze the instant he sensed my approach. I stood still, uncertain of how to respond next. His gaze carried a profound weight of unexpressed thoughts, far too important to ignore. Our gazes met, and I experienced. My heart raced. No words passed between us, yet it felt as though we were immersed in a deep, silent dialogue, each of us reluctant to disrupt the stillness. In a fleeting instant he turned away, Possibly sensing that the stillness was precariously balanced on the brink of peril, that I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves, and quietly noted that I had. "There's a bit of work to wrap up in a different room." He merely nodded, his head bowed. Yet I caught a subtle quiver in his hands. This silent exchange conveyed so much, more powerful than any spoken argument, and it was evident. We required space to prevent ourselves from yielding to the developing emotions. For several days we maintained our distance, but the underlying tension only grew stronger. Every time I thought I could leave it behind, something would draw me back into those reflections. It was clear he was having a hard time, and a feeling of guilt was growing inside me that we both recognized that we had crossed an unseen boundary, even though nothing had been directly articulated. One night, when he returned home late once more, it struck me that my evasion wasn't merely due to responsibility. I felt a deep fear regarding my inability to withstand this unforeseen pull, and that night, it seemed as though my determination could break apart at any moment. Our paths crossed unexpectedly in the hallway that I tried to move past him without meeting his gaze, yet he blocked my path. A wave of panic washed over me, but retreat was not an option. He spoke then, his voice soft and heavy with feeling. "I'm uncertain about the dynamics unfolding between us, yet I can no longer overlook it." His admission took me by surprise. He tried to express his emotions, yet in his voice, I discerned my own bewilderment and hopelessness. This appeared to be a crucial turning point for us both. I came to understand that the reins of the situation were slipping away from me, and a transformation was essential. With all the strength I could gather, I told him we needed to put an end to this. He remained silent, yet his expression revealed the struggle he was facing. The dialogue paved the way for us to redefine our limits, even amidst the chaos within. Starting the following day, we both made an effort to keep our distance. I took care to avoid being alone with him, and he also steered clear of common areas. We shared an unspoken agreement to wipe away the events that had unfolded. The decision was challenging, yet it was essential. Gradually we began to return to our usual patterns, striving to heal the divide that had emerged. I made an effort to move past that night, while he behaved as though everything remained the same. Still, an unusual void lingered inside me, a gap that had once been filled by that silent bond, that I realized that these feelings had changed me. And no matter how hard I tried, a part of me would always remember that electric tension. Thus we embarked on a new chapter, resuming our old roles, but with a deeper awareness. That evening, the rain fell heavily, as if it were being dumped from a bucket, and I sat wrapped in a blanket on the couch, listening to the thunder rumble in the distance. The storm came on suddenly, catching me off guard, and leaving no time to close the windows upstairs. Stefan's presence was a constant source of solace for me, that he possessed a soothing aura, even amidst the turmoil. I cast a quick look in his direction. He sat on the floor, legs crossed, his gaze directed outside as if searching for answers in the rain. His eyes revealed a depth beyond simple curiosity. My heart raced, not merely due to the storm, but from the understanding that our bond went beyond the usual stepmother-stepson relationship. An unexplainable connection existed. "Did you hear the thunder?" I inquired, trying to ease the mood. He nodded, his gaze fixed on the rain falling softly outside. I reflected on the moments we spent on this very couch when he was younger, enjoying cartoons together. A blend of nostalgia, tenderness, and an elusive emotion stirred inside me. "It's always so soothing," he said quietly. I contemplated his words. Indeed, it had provided comfort during my youth, yet now the ambience was thick, almost tangible with energy. The rain maintained a rhythmic patter on the roof, setting a cadence for my swirling thoughts. I felt that this night would signify something important for us, yet neither of us had the courage to speak it aloud. "Do you recall the times we crafted forts out of pillows?" I inquired, attempting to redirect my thoughts from the mounting tension. Stefan turned, his smile illuminating the darkness around him. "Indeed, you often referred to it as our hidden fortress," he reflected, a hint of wistfulness in his voice. I chuckled as I recalled how we used to hide from your husband when he came home from work. Those were simpler times when our pillow fort became our entire universe. "There's more to me than meets the eye," I've always hoped you understood that you could share anything with me, I confessed, avoiding his gaze. At that moment, I understood that an invisible wall stood between us, hindering genuine connection. I understand, he replied, his tone shifting to a more earnest note, but there are moments when it becomes difficult. You see, when thoughts of you cross my mind, I feel unusual. He paused, and I sensed the turmoil within him as he grappled with his revelation. What do you mean? I pressed on. Despite my suspicions about the answer, his statement resonated as a challenge, igniting a mix of fear and anticipation within me. That I suppose I sensed that there's something deeper connecting us. He confessed, and in his gaze, I glimpsed my own thoughts mirrored back at me. The confession hung in the atmosphere, unavoidable. From that moment, everything changed. Our conversation unfolded, yet the words held significance. Each look, each unintentional brush of skin, was imbued with a palpable energy. As I reached to adjust my blanket, our hands brushed against each other. In the midst of the tempest of feelings swirling within, he drew nearer, and I sensed his warmth enveloping me. I felt both right and wrong simultaneously. In that instant, I realized this was not how the relationship between a stepmother and stepson ought to unfold, yet I found it difficult to contemplate the concept of boundaries. It feels incredibly warm and inviting in this space, he noted, tilting his head back. His shoulder brushed against mine, sending a shiver of excitement through me. His voice carried a hint of vulnerability that stirred a desire in me to nurture it. Indeed, it truly is, I concurred, my heart pounding. Time appeared to stand still, and we both sensed that something was unfolding between us, something unmistakable. At times, I find myself pondering how circumstances might have changed if he began, yet his words hung in the air, incomplete. A quiet beckoning that I've contemplated it as well. How might things have unfolded if there hadn't been this barrier? I inquired, my tone more forceful than I had meant it to be. His gaze locked onto mine, brimming with an intensity that left me breathless. If we could just be human without all these rules, he said, pausing, his voice a blend of hope and fear. I came to understand that he experienced the same attraction. Our conversation deepened, and even though I was aware I ought to halt, I found myself unable to do so. Our gazes conveyed our unspoken longings and anxieties. Within me, a struggle was unfolding. I wished for this moment to stretch on, to delve into these emotions. But I understood it could unravel all that we held dear. Stefan, we need to. I started to speak, but he interrupted me. That I understand that this is not right, but what can I do? Manage it. His words, heavy with anguish and uncertainty, struck a chord within me. His genuine nature surrounded me. That I softly assured you, you're not alone in this, that I share these feelings as well. Yet we must proceed with caution. It is intricate. I sought the right words to guide us through this, yet my own feelings obscured my clarity. Why must it be so wrong? He pondered, a hint of resentment coloring his thoughts. Done. Once more my heart ached, as the norms of the world seemed far removed from our own reality. Because society fails to comprehend us, we must follow the norms, I responded, though the words seemed empty even to me. The norms and rules felt entirely disconnected from our genuine emotions. We lingered in a tense quiet, the atmosphere heavy with unsaid reflections. I understood the necessity of being transparent, and eventually I comprehended this conversation has the potential to change everything. Let's openly express our feelings without fear or judgment, I proposed, mindful of the potential risks. Stefan's eyes revealed his inner turmoil. I sense that you are the only one who truly understands me, he admitted, his voice now more assured. You are so much more than simply my stepmother. Those words resonated with me profoundly. I concurred, and in that moment, my anxieties and uncertainties appeared to vanish. It frightens me, he admitted, his openness reflecting my own. However, I cannot overlook it. I will stand by you regardless of what anyone else thinks. I leaned in, our warmth intertwining. And I desire that as well, I expressed, sensing the world diminish, leaving only us and our feelings. But how can we keep knowing it's wrong, he inquired, his voice trembling with feeling. Inhaling deeply, I sought to collect my scattered thoughts. I'm not sure, Stefan, but it's quite intricate. We must exercise caution. We must not allow this to ruin our family or our lives, I said. However, The more I elaborated, the less significance it appeared to hold. Why is this so challenging? Why is it so difficult for us to find happiness? His voice resonated with authentic yearning. I remembered how, as a young one, he constantly pursued answers to life's challenging questions. And there he stood, that same boy, wrestling with the intricacies of existence. Sometimes life doesn't give us what we want, I said, feeling tears well up. This dialogue was demanding yet freeing. Stefan gazed at me, a knowing look in his eyes that we were acutely aware of the reality behind our words. Yet that awareness did little to alleviate our predicament. The night grew darker. With the rain providing a steady rhythm, we lingered in quietude, each absorbed in our own reflections. The connection between us deepening, filled with feelings we couldn't overlook. I refused to let this be merely a figment of my imagination. I finally declared, I want you to understand that you hold great significance in my life, regardless of what unfolds in the future. There was determination in my voice. I could no longer conceal my emotions. Stefan turned to me, his eyes sparkling with excitement that I desire this as well. I wish to support you in every way possible, even if it's challenging. His genuine nature enveloped me in warmth. We can seek a path to be together without destroying everything, I proposed, apprehension still present but eclipsed by resolve. He nodded, his gaze resolute. That I am prepared. Let's be truthful with one another, that we can overcome this, as long as we stand united. That I smiled, feeling the tension fade away. This marked the dawn of an unfamiliar journey, filled with both trepidation and a sense of freedom. We decided to move forward carefully, one step at a time without trepidation. As the rain started to ease, I sensed that united, we could confront any obstacle. In that instant, I realized that love may be intricate, yet if it is authentic, it cannot be mistaken. We sat next to each other, conscious that this was merely the beginning. If this narrative has resonated with you and if you're looking for more delightful and surprising stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel.